Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Sister Sister, a podcast for spiritual baddies. We are your hosts, Ellen and Maya, and today we are talking about the untold truths regarding the spiritual journey. So, this one's a little bit of a deep dive and probably one of our more nitty gritty episodes. So, let's get right into it.
Absolutely. I thought that it would be appropriate, I did the script writing for this episode, for us to start out with shadow figures and the Hat Man. Because me personally, when I was starting to spiritually awaken, everyone's like, you're not going to see shadow people right away. And then I saw shadow people right away and lost my mind. So we're going to start with that. So, what are shadow people? Shadow people are often described as seeing a dark shape floating down the hall, a flash of movement out of the corner of your eye as if something or someone was there, but when you look, you see nothing out of the ordinary, or an orb of energy that you are not quite sure you are actually seeing in person, or it could be on a video or in photographs.
Who are these figures? Since the energy of these mystery shadows appear dark, people often misunderstand what these shapes are and immediately must think it must be something otherworldly that is threatening, like a demon or angry ghost with unfinished business. As ominous as they may seem, they are not. These shadowy shapes are often loved ones and spirits, both people and animals, and they are visiting those they love on Earth. The same goes for the flashes you see out of the corner of your eye or energy orbs you may see, especially in photographs or videos. They can be harmless people or animals in spirit who used to reside or visit the location. They do not have to be connected to people who are currently occupying the space. They visit because the space held good memories for them or because they're curious about what is happening now with the space. And now we'll talk a little bit about Bruce.
So I just want to preface this with saying Bruce was the first shadow person I experienced, and Bruce was my college apartment, which we lived in an old house that was built in the 1800s. It's a ghost, you could say. So Bruce and I had a deal. When I cleansed, he was allowed to stay. He was the original owner of the house, from what I have gotten from him, and he was in World War I, I believe. He fought in a war regardless. So whenever I first saw Bruce, absolutely scared me to death. I was like, who is this tall, shadowy man standing in my kitchen? Bruce is actually super chill. I personally reminded him a lot of his daughter, and that was why he was showing up more in our space. And his family actually has some witchy woo woo history in it. So, fun facts. So, anyways, Bruce and I started to build like a trusting relationship. The only thing was I had to leave my closet door open when I lived in my apartment so he could use it as a portal to come in and out. And one time I closed it, not even thinking, went to bed, and my phone got thrown across my room into my regular door because he wanted to leave. Uh, he's not aggressive, though. That was the most aggressive thing he's ever done. But so whenever I was moving out of my college apartment, Bruce asked me if he could come with me. He was like, I don't want to stay here. He's like, I like you. And I was like, I went and said to my mom, I was like, can I bring Bruce home? And she goes, who is Bruce? And I was like, he's my ghost friend. And she was like, I don't care. So Bruce now resides with me mostly. He tends to follow me. He's kind of like a protector, and he very much so was a house spirit, become my personal spirit team dude. But yeah, that's the story of Bruce. I thought it was a really funny anecdote to put in this episode. But
Yeah, the last time Elle stayed over for my birthday last year, Bruce came. Mind you, I will say this, guys, I don't see Bruce, and it's not because I can't see spirits. It's just like for me, I genuinely don't see any like good spirits per se. I tend to see more of the bad ones. That's just like for me. Sometimes I see good ones, but more often than not, I usually tend to see the bad ones. Needless to say, Elle stays over. Bruce comes along for the ride, and we're going to bed. We had a long day. Elle had just got here and drove like 4 hours, whatever. And so I'm staying in the room with my mom because I gave Elle my room to stay in. And Bruce is standing at the edge of my mom's side of the bed, and my mom freaks out. And meanwhile, I was half asleep, so I didn't pay her any mind. I was like, "What the frick are you talking about? What are you talking about?" And then the next morning, she tells Elle, and Elle's like, "Oh yeah, that's Bruce. Sorry."
Yeah, Bruce the friendly ghost, I guess.
But he literally was just standing there, apparently just looking at my mom, I guess, and I guess he was assessing the situation. I don't know,
Like,
but yeah,
why are you here?
yeah.
Who are these people?
So,
So, moving
you
on to
want
a little bit more serious version of the shadow people, the Hat Man. Who is the Hat Man? The Hat Man is said to be an evil entity often placed in the category of paranormal phenomena referred to as shadow people. Shadow people are just, what we've said before, dark, vaporous forms, the shape of humans that kind of, are like a ghost, you could say. Some might be like a dilute manifestation of people who were once living, others may be something else that we don't understand. The Hat Man is a singular character inside a broader category and has been reported as particular character traits, such as a more solid outline than most shadow people, and especially notable visually. He's always wearing a hat, whether, it's like an old timey hat or some other new type of hat, but he usually is in old timey clothes, a long trench or a cape, and the hats can differ from a top hat, fedora, kind of like an old cowboy hat. Some have seen him with red eyes, others report a featureless dark face, but he is always tall, 6 feet at minimum, and even more often, people say he's like 8 to 10 feet tall, forcing him to crouch while standing. Imagine opening your eyes at night and seeing a hunched figure bending over you unnaturally with a hat on. That's basically what people see. Now, here's the thing with the Hat Man. He usually doesn't do anything physically. He just is kind of there to creep people out. And the Hat Man also can just be a form of night terrors as well. So, like, definitely make sure it's like a spiritual thing and not like a you need mental health help thing if you start seeing the Hat Man. Also, if you take entirely too much Benadryl, you can start to hallucinate and see the Hat Man. But it's kind of just like an understood shadow figure across pretty much every culture in the world has some version of the Hat Man.
So now we're going to talk about why this happens during your spiritual awakening. More often than not, when you go through a spiritual awakening, you will have an encounter with some form of shadow people or sight of shadows. This isn't to fearmonger or scare people, but there are a few spiritual explanations as well as mundane ones for this. Remember, mundane always comes over magic in this process. If there's a logical explanation, go with that, but sometimes these things just can't be explained away. The first reason for seeing shadow people on a spiritual level is that you are becoming more open to the spiritual realm by opening your mind. It's more common for children and animals to see manifestations of ghosts or shadow. As we grow older, we tend to block that out, some out of fear, some for logic, but as you open up your mind, you're more likely to start seeing the paranormal. The second reason is both spiritual and psychological. When you go through a spiritual awakening, you're met with the darker parts of yourself that need to be healed, or your shadow self. All the trauma, self destructive habits, and overall negativity you carry with you comes to the light. Some believe you start seeing shadow people during this time as a manifestation for needing to heal yourself, a psychological manifestation of your own darkness. Ever wonder why people call this type of healing work shadow work? It's because you have to heal the dark parts of yourself or your shadow self. The last reason is for the mundane, but basically for specific circumstances. If you only see these shadowy figures in bed or in nightmares, you may be suffering from sleep paralysis or night terrors. If that's the case and they get worse, be sure to consult a doctor. I will say this, as a kid, I used to see a lot of things, and even up until I was about like 15, 16. So like where we moved to where I currently lived, I used to see a lot of things, especially at night. So my mom bought, so basically she bought big like raw stone of onyx or obsidian and put them at the four corners of my room. We had a rock place right by our house that sold like all kinds of crystals and things, and he recommended that putting each one in each corner of my room would help with that. And ever since then, they mostly stopped. Sometimes I will see things out the corner of my eye, but I just like ignore it and keep it moving because I'm just like, it's if you don't belong here. I will say I do tend to hear things more at night, especially if I'm up randomly at like 3, 4 a.m. And most recently, something fell out of nowhere in the middle of our um, spiritual room. And I was like, I'm not getting up. I don't care who's there, what's there. Get the hell out of my house. You do not belong here. But I refused to get up. I didn't even get up to pee. I was just like, nope, that'll be a later problem.
So, next, we're going to be talking about the concept of the dark night of the soul. I'm going to go ahead and talk about what it is and what happens during it. So, the dark night of the soul represents a profound period of transition throughout awakening and your spiritual journey. It is a psychological and spiritual call to shed the conditioned self that no longer serves us, making way for a new, more aligned way of being. And during this time, the dark night of the soul is different for every individual who experiences. From an overall perspective, though, there is usually a catalyst that starts this process. So it could be an event that affects you deeply and emotionally, where you feel existential crisis or dread. Maybe someone close to you passed away, or you have a trigger from childhood that resurfaces. Regardless, this is once again different for everyone. Some people can find their way through this on their own, but there is no shame in needing to get extra help. And as always, we urge you to get mental health help if you need it. Overall, the dark night of the soul is about transformation. Anyone who has gone through it will tell you the only way out is through it. This process is to heal past wounds so you can move forward into a brighter future with a more healed version of yourself. It's time to face the darkness within you head on and transform into a better you. This process can be long and may occur more than once during your spiritual journey. The universe's work is on a divine timing schedule. So while you may be ready to heal one part of yourself, you may go through this process again later on when you need to heal another part of yourself. The entire process can feel very isolating or like you've lost yourself completely. You'll question pretty much everything you've ever been told about the world and how it works. This can, however, lead to spiritual psychosis. So, once again, if you need mental health help, please get it if you think you or someone you may know may be experiencing spiritual psychosis. Please go ahead and listen to season 2, episode 1 to get a full understanding of what exactly that is and what it looks like, and then talk to a professional. We went into it very deep dived in that first episode of that season.
Lack of interest in small talk or the mundane. So, once you expand your way of thinking and worldview, conversations about things as trivial and insignificant as the weather, what you have planned for the day, and any other form of small talk tend to become exhausting and nauseating. When you're on a spiritual journey, you'll want to watch people who are content in their lives with the small talk and nothing deeper. So, going through a spiritual journey and awakening, you learn to question everything. And through that experience, you tend to expand your worldview. Whether it's researching other religions, becoming fascinated with crystals and tarot readings, or simply just being more interested in natural healing, it doesn't matter because any form of small talk is going to seem boring. It's not that you don't like the people that hold these conversation, you just would not want to be a part of them anymore, which is fine. You're now on a quest for a deeper meaning in life, and that is the main cause for the unrelatable nature to those who tend to surround you and can only seem to concern themselves with office gossip. This was a big thing for me, especially during my time working at one of the US's most popular coffee chains, Starbucks. I worked with a lot of college kids, and granted I was a graduate student myself. They were like more like 18, 19, 20-year olds, and like the things they used to talk about were so trivial. I would be like, why? Like, why is this so relevant? And the other thing I noticed too is like maybe it was just this environment that I worked in, but everybody was friends with each other, like on a personal level. Like I'm talking, you guys were best friends outside of work, and you were work besties. And I will say I did have my work bestie, but we always knew the time and the place when there was time to like, be besties, and when there were times to be like coworkers. And I felt like a lot of people that I worked with it at the Starbucks in particular did not have that kind of boundary. And caused me to get in a little bit of drama because of it, but that's neither here or there because it's going to kind of relate to the next section we're about to talk about.
Yeah, for me personally, with the whole small talk thing, like up until I made it and made wow, up until I met and started dating the guy I'm seeing now, the dating scene was horrendous. Trying to hold a conversation with someone on an app was terrible. Like, I'm the
I
type
don't
of
miss those
person that I'm
days.
like, let's listen to music and talk until 3 a.m. and, you know, tell me your deepest, darkest secrets and everything awful about you so I know right off the bat, right? Like, I'm the type of person I'm like, I want to know what your entire ideological worldview is the first time that we hang out. And that's not how people work,
Oh
unfortunately.
my god. It's always
But
like 21 questions. Like, what's your
yeah,
favorite color?
if I got
Like,
asked one more time what my favorite color was, I think I would have actually lost my mind because I absolutely couldn't do it anymore. And funnily enough, the first date, I guess we would call it, it was a double date where me and him hung out. We ended up listening to music and talking until 3 o'clock in the morning about all kinds of different topics and things. And it was the first time I actually felt like I could have a conversation with someone and that they were in depth in like not necessarily spirituality, but just having intellectual thought processes and wanting to talk about ideologies and religion and things. And we're able to look at different worldviews and accept them that like other people find that is true, even if it's not true for yourself. Yeah,
right. Yeah.
small
I
talk.
can't imagine that if, God forbid, Charles and I ever break up, but I can't imagine like having to go on a dating app again, or like casually seeing people and being like having to do the what's your favorite color? What's your favorite food and music? Like, no, shut up. Shut up.
It's
Shut
the
up.
freaking trenches out there. I salute anyone who is still on the
I
apps.
I know. Usually the first thing I say is, do you know your birth chart? And if you don't, let me get your birth time and analyze you right now before I decide whether I want to associate with you. So, anyway,
So the next part is losing people that you thought would be in your life forever. This is one that Amaya and I both can relate to very heavily. So, this is going to be one of the toughest pills to swallow throughout your spiritual awakening and spiritual journey. Some people, to put it simply, are just bad for you. This goes past the point of the people who only participate in small talk that we just talked about. Sometimes your awakening will weed out those closest to you, usually for reasons that aren't really apparent right in front of you. Maybe that friend who always compliments your makeup is secretly telling everyone else how awful it looks. Maybe your romantic partner doesn't actually plan to stay with you long term, or maybe your parents' actions from your childhood have become more apparent, and that they were like neglectful or things like that. And through your healing, you can now see it. It doesn't matter who the person is in your life, how long you've known them, or how good you perceive them to be. Once you start the journey, some people are just going to exit your life. That's just the unfortunate reality of the situation. A lot of times you'll hear words along the lines of, I just don't understand why you've changed so much. I don't even know you anymore from these people, which is an excuse for them to blame you for their terrible behavior that you are willing to put up with until now. We as human beings on a spiritual journey are meant to always be changing and evolving, to be on a path of becoming our most authentic and highest self. we have to be changing and evolving. 9 times out of 10, the people who blame the turmoil in your personal relationships on you changing in these circumstances, while they may not realize it, are having you reflect back onto them the dark parts of themselves that they need to heal. But they aren't ready to do so, so they make it your fault that the relationship is falling apart. The good news is, even with people leaving your life, you'll gain new people in your life who are better aligned with you, who have similar thought processes as you, and really just overall people who you have as a soul family.
This last year was my hardest year with that. I will be honest with you. I had a friendship breakup with a friend that I actually worked with this person. So we were coworkers and ended up becoming really good friends, and then ended up becoming a trio with one of their other friends. And that friendship did not make it to 2025. Let me tell you that. It didn't even make it to halfway through 2024. But sometimes it's just the way the cookie crumbles. And I realized that, and I think the thing too is that I'm very self aware, and I'm very much the kind of person, like, if you asked me maybe like 2, 3 years ago, I would never take accountability. I would blame it on the other person and be like, well, you did this, so just following your steps. But I feel like now, as I've gotten older, especially, and I've always been like pretty mature for my age, but something I will say is I've become very self-aware of my actions. So I know when I'm wrong, and I will acknowledge when I'm wrong. And it may be really hard to swallow sometimes, but you know what? If you don't take accountability, you're never growing. If you like if you like to, always blame someone else, always play victim, you're never gonna grow as a person. You're gonna be the reason why a lot of people don't mess with you anymore, and they just like keep their distance. But I think part of the reason why I lose a lot of my friends is also realizing my worth and being like, hey, yeah, like, I don't like this. I don't like how you're treating me. What you did, what you said hurt my feelings. And in this case, these people chose to continually blame me for something that was really, if I might say so myself, childish, very high school drama like. And yeah, I played some part in it. I will say that, but at the end of the day, they continuously blamed me. They continuously made everything to seem my fault, basically seem like it was my fault. And that's when I realized, hey, you guys don't actually care about me. So I'm going to peace out now. Have a great life. Wish you all the best.
And
So,
I'm
yeah.
gonna say something here. God's forbid you decide to be a crazy person like me and get multivite. Because it will uproot you so fast away from people that are not meant to be a part of your life. It's horrifying. And
Yeah.
this little lovely thing here that I am wearing currently, disappears and comes back every time it needs to kick people out of my life. So,
Yeah. In the past 5, 6 years that I've known Elle, and the, well, 4 years, 4 years, 5 years that you've been on your
um,
spiritual journey,
5 years, yeah.
yeah, she trusted that little Moldavite, and I've seen every person that she developed a connection with literally just peace out the window.
And it's always for the best. It is always for the best.
Yeah. So I will say this, like, if you are dealing with situations where, like, if that were me, I wouldn't do them like that. You already know you're the better person. Like, if you know that as a person, you're not that kind of person that would treat others the way they treat you, that's already a sign of growth, because an unhealed person only focuses on themselves. So that's the little anecdote there. So next, let's talk about unsolicited comments about damnation of your soul or that you're crazy. Oh, this is fun. This is so much fun. This is my favorite section, I think. If you come from a religious background, then these kinds of comments are bound to happen no matter what. And even if you don't come from a religious background and have people in your life who do, you may still get these comments. You will most likely go through some heavy ideological crises if you grew up in religion and are now going through a spiritual awakening, and that's okay. You're going to question everything and have guilt from religious beliefs, and it may be overwhelming at times, especially if you're constantly being told what you're doing is a sin or that you're going to end up going to hell. On the other side of the card, you may be met with people who call you crazy, people who think that your new set of beliefs and ideologies are so far removed from reality that you are absolutely certified cray cray. This can come from people following religions or belief systems or people that don't even have any spiritual beliefs at all. The important thing that in both cases is that you learn to block out the noise.
Let me tell you, the Catholic guilt I still experience is ridiculous. Is ridiculous. I have not practiced Catholicism since I was 17 years old. I'm going to be 25.
I stopped way before that. I don't mess with Catholicism. And yeah, that's what my current parents grew up on. Both my parents got all the way to their confirmation. I only got to communion. Not that I ever want to get married in a Catholic church anyway, and I'm glad that my partner agrees on that because it ain't happening. And he's Catholic too, might I add, but our parents are a little more traditional. At least his parents want the whole church wedding, and I'm like, sorry, Rusty, we're getting a ordained minister. So, like, no matter who I marry, like, I'm not getting married in church.
Yeah, no, absolutely not
Ridiculous.
for me as well. I mean, my partner grew up Jewish, and he doesn't claim that now either. So we're a very interesting couple. I grew up Catholic, he grew up Jewish, and both of us don't claim our religion and claim something completely different now. But I feel like for me personally, I get these comments on such a regular basis because of where I live, right? I live in Central PA. My shop is in Central PA. And if you follow me personally on TikTok, you probably saw my post recently. Well, not super recently because this is like March, but uh, I had posted over like December that I went to see my dad and the local health inspector because I make cosmetic products. The health inspector isn't legally required to inspect me for like once a year, but they are encouraged to. Is also a pastor. And he said to my dad about this place and how it came up on his list. And he said, I'm not going there. And my dad was like, why? Mind you, doesn't realize my dad's daughter owns this place, that it's me that owns it. And he says, well, there's a witch in there. I'm sorry, what? I just want to know what people think. Do they think I'm like this old hobbled over lady with a huge wart and green face? Like I
I
need
think
to
you're Alpha Buff
understand.
from Freaking Wicked.
Like I need to understand. But yeah, so hearing it on a regular basis is a thing where I live, and I honestly just laugh at this point because like it's so funny. It's like, what do you think? Like I'm literally just a 24-year-old with blue hair. Like I'm not that scary. All right. So the next thing that is an untold truth is healing and having traumas continuously resurface. So going back to that idea of dark night of the soul, traumas will come forward when you are trying to heal. It's inevitable. However, how you go about healing is completely up to you. For many, doing this with a therapist will help, especially if you have a lot of trauma. For others, it may just be a point of needing to process things, to recognize your triggers that resurface the trauma and find a way to get closure from it. In a lot of cases, trauma comes from other people and the way they treated us. And a majority of the time, you're not going to get an apology from those people, not a genuine one at least. It's going to be like, I'm sorry you feel that way. But if you have gone through any sort of gaslighting, manipulation, love bombing, or general narcissistic behavior at the hands of someone else, unless that person also starts to spiritually awaken, you're probably going to be forced to come to terms with what happened yourself. And I'm not saying you have to forgive them, but you have to make peace with the situation in a way. You have to kind of try and just understand it to the best of your ability because you're probably never going to get that apology that you would like.
Next, and this is a big one, is a higher sensitivity to other energies and getting nauseous when someone with impure intentions is in your presence. People often claim this sort of sensitivity as being an empath, and while that is true for some, sometimes you're just more in tune with everything around you, making it easier to pick out people who aren't good for you and others. Having a good feeling about someone upon meeting them is usually a sign of your intuition telling you to stay away. This can be hard in some situations because it can be your best friend's new romantic partner or a mutual friend that everyone seems to love. You don't have to tell the people around you about this feeling, but you may want to, as it will probably save the person from a lot of hurt in the future. I definitely get gut feelings about things all the time. Like if I know someone's intentions aren't pure, like I know, and I used to always tell my boyfriend all the time, like I was just like, I don't know what it is, but I don't like this person. Their vibes are off. And I feel like up until recently, he never believed me. He was just like, "Oh, you're crazy," which is where the other one comes in. But then he started realizing, and he's gotten a little more intuitive himself as well. But he's like, "Oh, I see what you mean." Like he respects it. But yeah, it it can be just intuition. It doesn't have to necessarily be an empath, but more often than not, usually when you're in your spiritual journey and you go higher and higher and higher, you start to become an empath.
Yeah, and I find this like interesting because I was in a situation like not too long ago where I basically was told like not to take it to heart if someone didn't like me or they didn't get along with me because they don't tend to get along with women, etc., etc. Because they hadn't gotten along with someone else in the past, and then I come to find out that this person is very spiritual, crystals, has bracelets on of crystals. We were talking about different practices of like cleansing and stuff whenever I was in their presence. And it became very clear to me that it wasn't that they had an issue with women, it was that they had an issue with that one woman because they ended up hurting someone that they were very close to. So I think that like sometimes people don't get it. Like they're like, "Oh, she's just difficult." And it's like, "No, like I just know." I know the second that someone walks into my shop whether they're going to be a problem or not. Like I can pick it up immediately. It's kind of terrifying. I get some people that come up to me at markets and they're like, "What do you think my vibe is? What crystal should I get?" And I'm like, "You need this," and I'll point to it and they'll read the like card of what it says and they're like, "How did you know that?" I'm like, "I'm a witch. It's my fun little party trick." So now we have a deep one, trying to heal generational trauma and curses. So, what exactly is a generational curse? In many spiritual beliefs, a generational curse means ongoing bad habits or problems that pass down in families, usually from the wrong actions or unsettled issues of family members who came before. These curses affect the newer generations, creating a long lasting cycle of negative vibes that keep going for many years. These curses show up in different ways, like health problems that can't be explained or continuous money troubles. Even when there seem to be ways to get better, these issues keep happening in families, creating an unending cycle of difficulties. A big sign of these curses is ongoing fights or misunderstandings in the family, which can be seen as troubles between couples, problems between parents and children, or fights between siblings. These conflicts create a cycle of distrust and loneliness, which seems to be pushed forward by some unknown force, making each generation more separated. This negative atmosphere makes the curse stick around even longer in the family's history. So, how to start processing and breaking kind of generational curses. Beginning the process of releasing a family from a generational curse includes several steps that are aimed at healing and change. This challenging yet rewarding journey involves spiritual cleaning, saying sorry for past family errors, getting help from skilled spiritual helpers or mental health professionals if you need family therapy, improving your own self and starting new positive family customs, traditions, things like that. These actions cooperate these actions cooperate to assist families in escaping the harmful cycles that have been held that have been holding them back for many generations. Everyone in my family says I'm the cycle breaker, and let me tell you, it is awful. It
It's
is awful.
exhausting.
It's so tiring. I'm like, I don't want anyone else to have to go through this in the future, but I am so tired.
Yeah. So next is having extremely vivid dreams that oftentimes become deja vu. So vivid dreams, some people going through a spiritual awakening may experience more dreams and even more vivid dreams. You may find yourself waking up in the mornings and having a hard time differentiating between something that happened in a dream and something that happened in real life. Oftentimes, dreams become more vivid during a spiritual awakening as your spirit continues on its journey towards enlightenment. And the next part is deja vu, which is something I personally experience all the time. Feelings of deja vu are similar experiences, such as thinking about somebody you haven't seen in ages, then running into them the very next day, are also very early signs of a spiritual awakening. If you've experienced or have been experiencing more deja vu, a strange feeling that you've experienced something before, this could be a sign that your spirit is awakening. You may also encounter deja vu during a dream you had and then it comes to life. Yeah, that happens to me all the time. Like things that I'll dream about weeks before suddenly happen, or like I'll think of someone that I used to be friends with like ages ago and then they'll pop up on like Facebook and like you're suggested, or like sometimes even see them randomly and I'm just like, that's sus. But yeah, those are common signs of like a spiritual awakening. Next is grieving your old self. Grieving your old self during a spiritual awakening is a common experience where you feel a sense of loss and sadness as your previous identity and perspectives begin to dissolve and transform, making way for a new, more evolved version of yourself. It's essentially mourning the aspects of your old self that no longer align with your expanding consciousness. And oftentimes this could just be as simple as like, oh, I miss the way things used to be like. And I definitely agree from like college years a lot. In the sense like I was like so carefree and I was just vibing. It was all vibes. But now I'm just like, at the same time you live and you learn and you grow and it's like maybe it's a good thing I moved on. So the last part, which is the most important part and kind of goes with the last one, is ego death. A spiritual awakening often involves a loosening of the ego, which can feel like letting go a part of yourself and leading to grief and mourning for the old patterns and beliefs you once held dear. While grieving is natural, it's important to acknowledge the positive aspects of your old self and integrate the valuable lessons learned while moving forward with your new identity, which is basically what I said before. So, yeah, before I
So
realized I muted L.
it's okay. Cut that part out. But it's a lot. There's a lot of things that happen during a spiritual awakening and then your spiritual journey afterwards. And you need to realize that it is hard and there's a lot of frustrations and feelings and emotions and things that you're going to go through. But at the end of the day, this path is the best path, in my opinion.
It's better to be evolved than unevolved. And now it's time for tarot time.
I didn't even ask you. Not taking that one. What does the collective need to hear, spirit? There's the death card again, flipping over in the freaking deck. Just wants to be here, wants to be seen. So we have the Hermit, the card of Virgo. Hello, friends. If you're a Virgo, what's up?
Hello, darkness, my old friends.
Which is quite literally the energy of the Hermit. So this is a time to go within. It's a time to reevaluate yourself. I think this is very good for this episode. You know, that's kind of what your whole spiritual journey is about, the dark night of the soul, all those things, is going within, examining where you need to make changes, what needs to be healed, what you need to move forward from, what you need to cut out of your life, what you need to be bringing into your life, so on and so forth. It is a time of deep self-reflection and over analyzing everything in your life until you descend into madness. Not actually. If that happens, see a therapist.
And now let's move right on to Astrology Almanac with Elle.
Today, the moon enters Cancer, reminding us to tend to our emotional well being and needs for the next few days. Tomorrow, the sun in Pisces will trine with Mars in Cancer, bringing new enthusiasm and excitement to your creative projects. Then on the 11th, the Mercury in Aries will conjunct with Venus in Aries, both in Aries, with Venus retrograde. This will be a time to reconnect with a past flame or start fresh on old passion projects. Finally, on the 13th, Moon in Virgo will sextile Mars in Cancer, allowing you to be enthusiastic and emotionally invested in whatever your heart's desire is. But don't worry, Mercury retrograde is coming.
They said old flame. I don't know if I like that. But it may not resonate the same way for everybody else. It might be someone that, you guys just didn't work out. The timing sucked. But it was
Venus
like right.
retrograde meets Mercury retrograde in Aries? Aries?
It's giving messy.
It's giving everyone's ex is going to pester them.
I feel like I already feel like it's gonna happen. Like, damn, I gotta mentally prepare myself for this now. But anyway, thank you guys for tuning into another episode of Sister Sister. We hope you liked us, and you better like us. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at ss.spiritualpodcast. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify so you can be notified as to when the next episode drops. Thank you all for tuning in. We love you. Positive vibes. See you next time.
Bye, guys.